Welcome back to Game Retail Ramblings, episode number 16. I'm your host, Travis Severance, coming to you live from I Wore Shorts twice this week, Rochester, New York, home of the Millennium Games. Thanks to everybody that tuned in, that watched the video last week on UVS. I'd like to say that we had a successful pre-release for Girl Power. The set looks like it's really solid. There's some great foundational cards there. The treatments and the artwork is amazing. Thus far, the sales have been really good for it as well. I think that the character cards maybe don't have quite the same amount of power as the last two sets, so there's some adjustments that you might need to make from a player side of things, but I'm encouraged by the direction that they're headed in. And I'm excited a couple of months when the Attack on Titan set comes out, I get to make my return to mediocrity as far as the game goes. I thought the weekend went really well, and thank you for all your comments and your subscriptions. The stuff for the UVS video was really well received. I appreciated people chiming in with some topics for me as well. I think we're standing on like 630-ish subscribers now. We're trying to make a good push towards 700, and without you guys, I wouldn't be here for sure. Today's episode got hammered by the internet, so that's why we're not doing it live, so we're doing it in the studio, so I should have less mistakes than normal. I'm actually headed out tomorrow to the Monona Terrace, Madison, Wisconsin for the ACD Games Day. It's a distributor open house show that I go to every single year. They're nice enough to host me. I'm super close with the team out there. I think I've missed the show maybe 2 times in the last 20 years, give or take. Monona Terrace is a beautiful location. It's right there on the lake. The breakout rooms are great. The food is always good. The conversations are fantastic. So I've got 3 seminars at this show. The first one's going to be an AMA where the audience can ask me anything they'd like and I'll answer on the spot. There's a handful of people that submitted questions through their QR code, and if there's something that you really want to talk about, I usually try to divide those questions into categories so I talk about and cover as much as I can. If there's some reason why you don't want to ask a question during the show or during the time when the panel is on, feel free to come and see me. Pull me aside. I'll do my best to answer questions on the floor if I'm not busy already. And the 2 panels that I'm on, one is about diversification in your store with regard to product. So we'll talk about different ways that we can get into more things for your store that you can carry, get maybe outside of the stuff that you're doing primarily and carry some additional product to bring some additional revenue in. And the second one is best practices. And I believe it's supposed to be based on the store size as well. So there's going to be somebody in the panel that owns a smaller square footage wise store, a medium sized one, and then I think I'm there for the large size store. So that'll be a lot of fun. There's a moderator for those panels. They'll ask a bunch of questions of us, and I think maybe there's some audience participation as well. ACD in general has been a fantastic distributor for me for the entire time that I've been ordering. They were super patient with me when I was new and starting out. My sales rep took a lot of time, got a bunch of new products in front of me, sort of gave me a lay of the land to figure things out. The owner, Bob Maher, some people might know him. He's very well known in the Magic community. In 2004, he won the Magic Invitational. So there's Dark Confidant is actually the card that he ended up making, which is a pretty good card. He's in the Hall of Fame. He won a Pro Tour as well. Super well known in that space. His nickname was the Great One because he was just a phenomenal player and still is. The people that he have, the employees that he have are fantastic there. I think there's a lot of things that ACD has going for them as a distributor. Part of it is, number one, they've got the best sales team that I've ever seen collectively. They have a sales team that's educated on products. They can make suggestions. They know their accounts. They know their accounts' needs. They make good recommendations, and they've got a good attitude about things. And the other thing that they do really well is they're actually the people that have figured out the toy industry. The toy industry, for years and years and years, didn't really have distributors outside of some toy rep groups and different things like that. But all of those instances in the toy industry, you still had to order by the case, or you still had to order large quantities. So it didn't necessarily work for people that were used to being able to order in the game industry, where you order from a distributor and you order 1 or 2 boxes. You'd have to order 6 or 12 of something, and maybe you weren't going to sell them. Well, ACD kind of jumped in the middle of the toy industry probably a decade ago at this point. And they started working with a bunch of those publishers to take those bigger boxes and make them into smaller boxes and put them in the boxes that we have now. And they've done a really good job with that. So they have an account with Hasbro and Spin Master and a handful of other toy manufacturers and stuff. So if you're looking to dabble in toys and you don't necessarily want to set up a direct account with whoever the publisher is, they're a great place to sort of try some things out. You'll end up paying a little bit more because you're not buying the same volume that you would buy if you'd actually set up the direct account, but they'll give you the chance to try out a couple of different things and see if it'll sell. And then if you want to make that push to go direct with the publisher or the manufacturer afterwards, you can certainly do that. So they've been doing that and doing really well. It created a whole nother side of their business. So they have the toy side of things and they have the the hobby side of things. And the great part about it is when you go to one of their open houses, you get to see both of those groups in the same room. So you've got toy manufacturers that are there that'll show you their catalog and stuff, which you don't necessarily get to see at other shows. And they also have all the hobby publishers as well, your traditional board game, card game, role-playing game. Those people will be there. And then the third thing that they do that nobody else does as a distributor is they're the exclusive distributor outside of Asmodee Direct for Asmodee products. That's a big part of why I go to ACD. The nice thing is, too, when I'm ordering products from Hasbro, when KB and Toys R Us closed down, Hasbro needed to make a bigger push to get into smaller mom and pop stores as far as retail went, because they lost a huge chunk of their business. So they opened up direct ordering through their direct ordering portal to brick and mortar retail stores. Now there's terms and different things, and you have to apply for an account and you have to go through some hoops to be able to get on the website and order things, but they have a pretty large swath of stuff that you can order. Not everything that Hasbro sells you can order off their website, but a handful of stuff that they do sell. Now, the downside of what they do sometimes is they have these products that have no outside packaging. So what I mean by that is they'll send you 4 copies of the villain version of Star Wars Monopoly, but it has no outer packaging. So what you get is, if it gets put on a pallet, which typically our orders are pallet size, or not box size in general, it gets thrown on the pallet and it's got like 1 or 2 shrink wraps around it, and that's it. Shipping from wherever they're shipping, 9 times out of 10 that ends up coming in, there's dings and dents and damages and stuff like that. It's so much to the point where on a Hasbro invoice, they give you a 3% kickback because they just assume there's going to be damages baked in. Now, if you show damages beyond the number that they give you for that, you can go back and forth with their customer service and hunt that stuff down. But for me, what I've done is anything that doesn't have an outer packaging on it, I just order that from ACD. So the stuff that comes with outer packaging, I order from them. The stuff that doesn't have an outer packaging, I order from ACD, because there's a less likelihood that the thing's going to come in damaged that I'm going to have to make a claim on, and I'm going to have to go through that. So I pay a little bit more to get it from ACD. When it comes in, it's complete, it's not beat up, and I don't have to deal with any kind of returns on my receiving part of things. So I think that sort of covers ACD. Fantastic partner for me. I love working with them. Their website has its ups and downs and things like that, but they do a really good job. The other thing that they do well is year over year, I have consistently the less missed packs and less damages than any other distributor. We have a log that sort of keeps track of that stuff, and from time to time I'll send it out to a distributor to let them know how many damages they had over a period of time. Year in and year out, ACD has the least amount of mispicks, so they're people that are picking in the warehouse are doing a fairly good job. And then outside of that too, when they're packaging the stuff, they're not doing things like throwing role-playing books in with miniatures, so they create this rock tumbler of emptiness. The stuff comes in and it's not damaged. Today, the whole entire episode, outside of talking about ACD and what I'm going to be able to do, what I'm going to be doing there, is we're going to talk about not games, just other product lines that we carry. I mean, Rob asked this from the last show that I had. He went into the comments and asked this question, so I appreciate Rob for giving me the idea for the topic. When we moved over from the old location to this new location last June, we sort of didn't know who we were going to have for customers. We leaned into merchandising at a level that we hadn't done before. We had a lot more shelving here. We had a lot more space. We could spread out a little bit more. So what ended up happening when we moved in here is, through curiosity or word of mouth or whatever, we ended up with a whole pile of mainstream customers. So there's a lot more families that come into the store now. There's a lot more strollers. Not to say that we didn't have that in the old store. COVID was a big part of increasing growth for us and putting us on the map for the local area. There was just a ton of people that came into the store, and I talked about that on other episodes before. At the time, though, I didn't really have the space to lean into certain things. We had actually, the 2 days after COVID shut us down, $60,000 worth of Lego showed up that we couldn't sell during that. So that was us sort of trying to get Lego off the ground, and not a nice thing to have to worry about having to pay for within 45 days when you didn't know when the store was going to open back up and you couldn't sell anything on that pallet. So aside from that, in the old space, we had nano blocks, we had a handful of children's games, so we had some HABA stuff and different things like that. But we didn't lean into the periphery as much as we do now. And it's largely due to not necessarily the store that we wanted to have, but what the customers have told us that they want from us. So as we try things out and they sell, we continue to order more of those on a wider basis, and the sales are going to dictate what we put on the shelf. It's the customers asking us to a degree, but some of that's our own curation as well. So when I take a look at different things that we carry, I'm not going to talk about the more obvious stuff that I think the majority of the stores carry, right? We sell a ton of dice. We sell a ton of paints. We sell a ton of sleeves. Those are all fairly obvious non-game product things that I think the majority of stores, if you carry card games, you probably carry sleeves. If you carry miniature games, you probably carry paint. If you carry role-playing games, you probably carry dice, right? Those are kind of a given. We do a large amount of that stuff. We have a huge amount of space dedicated to those three things in general, but this is stuff that are well wider than what that normally is. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a top 7 by sales volume, and then I'll go into an explanation of each as well as best I can, and then maybe do an honorable mention at the end as well. So number 7 is going to be Darrington Press. Darrington Press carries all of the Critical Role merchandise. So Critical Role, super popular show that's focused on a role-playing group. There's a ton of fans. Usually they get somewhere between 60 or 80,000 for their live shows every week. Some additional stuff that's happening with them making their own channel and things like that. But it's a very dedicated fan base. We have a ton of shoppers that are here. It's a line of products that not a lot of stores carry, which is the other thing that's attractive to us. It's very quality clothing. They have different stuff that's based specifically around the characters, the episodes of the different shows that they're running, and it's a variety of stuff. We've got everything from oven mitts to kimonos to t-shirts to button-ups to socks to plushies to just everything under the sun. You couldn't get enough of it. And every single month they're coming out with more and more stuff, as well as a handful of different board games and things like that. So number 7, Darrington Press. Critical Role is the majority of the stuff that they do on that kind of thing, and they're leaning a little bit more into games. Number 6 is going to be anime and manga related items. So we leaned into a lot of the stuff that's more sold. There's more consumerism in the Japanese culture than there is in America. But what we have is we have statues, we have Remet series, which are these little figurines. We have 30 gashapon machines that just spit out these little globes, and there's different series of those, and they're sort of collectible, and they're sort of cute, and they're keychains, and they're statues, and they're figurines, and that sort of thing. Those things all do really well for us. There's not a ton of competition in the area in general. We carry a pretty wide selection, and it's sort of based on some of the other stuff a little further down this list where the popularity is picked up for us. So we dabble in that stuff, and it does really well. There's a handful of different places that you can go to order those. Most of the things that I'm going to talk about here, though, are not things that you can get from just a mainstream hobby distributor. You have to go out and you have to source some stuff. Number 5 is plush. Right now, plush is really huge for us. We have 4 or 5 different places that we order plush from. We have a giant amount of space that's dedicated to it. There's a ton of different IPs that it covers. It's doing well for us. I'm concerned about it personally. I think Squishables right now has sort of broken this barrier in terms of saturation in the market. A lot of people are carrying it. There's a store next door to us that sells like tarot cards and palm reading, and they have Squishables in their window with plague doctors and different things like that. So when I start seeing a brand in a lot of different places, that I start getting nervous about where things are going to go. The plush world is sort of reminding me a little bit of like the middle of the pop, when the pop figures became popular and you started to see them everywhere in gas stations and stuff like that, which was great for Funko, but for the rest of us trying to sell it or be unique with that, not so great afterwards. So we carry plush now. Plush is doing pretty well for us. It's something that I'm monitoring pretty closely to make sure that when this thing bursts, it's not going to, we're not going to get stuck with tens of thousands of dollars worth of inventory that just isn't going to move. Number 4 for us is books. We carry a lot of books. During the pandemic, a lot of people were going back and they were doing a lot of reading and things like that. So we started carrying some novels, and then we were carrying some manga, and then we started carrying trade paperbacks, and then we got into cookbooks. Now I have a huge selection of children's books as well. In fact, I've got tomorrow, there's an entire brand new display that we just ordered from Tennessee that's coming in, and it's literally just going to house children's books because I have that many of them and I need a separate section for them. Children's books, anything with Bluey or Paw Patrol or Pikachu on it, different things like that. There's a ton of books that are just children's books that are relative to the IPs that we have, whether it's Star Wars or whether it's Pokemon or any of the other things that we sell games around. There's probably a children's book for that, and those books sell pretty well because they're lower price point. Again, we have more mainstream customers that are coming in now than ever before, and while their parents are maybe looking for something a little bit more significant in the terms of games or board games or role-playing and things like that, they have children with them, and the children are usually allowed to spend $5 to $10 to $20 or something like that. So if I don't have those items around the store for them to buy, I'm going to miss out on those sales at the register, or I'm going to really hone in and say, okay, these are dollars that I'm potentially leaving on the table because I don't have a way for them to buy a little thing at the register or whatever. So books have done really well for us. There's a handful of different distributors out there that you can use. There's Ingram, there's Penguin, there's Simon & Schuster. You could even, we've had luck just buying stuff off of Amazon and reselling it for that based on what the sales are that are going on for Amazon. Number 3 for us is Gundam. It's like Lego, but it actually has margin, which is a great thing. Gundam's been around for like over 40 years at this point. It's a Japanese license. It's a Japanese brand. It takes a little bit of ordering. There's Bandai, there's Playmod, there's a handful of other places that you can get Gundam from. Forbes just wrote a big article last week on how much growth Gundam's having, which, again, to go back to the plush thing, when I start seeing these mainstream news outlets and things like that start to talk about things, the saturation in the market has picked up. That doesn't mean that I stop carrying something. It doesn't mean that I move on. It just means that I'm going to keep an eye on that, because if the rest of the world is looking at that and there's bigger stores with bigger buying power than what mine is, all of a sudden we'll start seeing Gundam show up on Walmart and Target and things like that. And those are tough places to compete with, sometimes as far as pricing and what that goes. Part of the thing with Gundam is the Witch of Mercury arc for anime that came out last year on Netflix was super popular. It's sort of got the same sort of cookbook, right? There's something devastating that happens to the world. There's a team of people, plucky underdogs that put their stuff together. They have little robots they fight. Putting the stuff together is really cool. They have different levels of kits that are already built into it too. So Lego sort of does that, but the quality of the models get better as you go along, and there's more complexity to it, to the point where like the first version of it's kind of just some snap-on pieces, and at the end you need like an engineering degree to put together these $300 kits. But they look amazing when they're done, and there's interchangeable parts, and they've got bases and all kinds of things. We've hosted a couple of Gundam days. We get 40 to 60 people in every single time. It's an awesome community to have. And again, the margin for that is really good. Number 2 for us is disc golf. We carry a ton of disc golf. Disc golf is something we've been carrying for over a decade at this point. We have a lot of disc golf courses locally. A lot of times people look at me funny when I say I carry disc golf, and what I usually challenge them with is take a look at where your store is and look at a 10-mile radius and see how many disc golf courses there are, because if you're not into disc golf and you don't understand what disc golf is, you may not realize how many people are actually out playing the game. Disc golf selling for other stores tends to be challenging because disc golf, depending on the area that you're in, is only sort of a summertime sport. Now, we have lunatics that play in the winter here, so it sells year round, but a lot of the places that would carry it just as a seasonal game don't get excited about having to put the discs away during the winter and things like that. We still continue to sell it. The nice thing about it is it can fit in a really small place with a lot of density. So the racking for it is set up, built for slat wall. You can get 12 discs inside of like an 8x8 square. It works out really well. You can stack a ton of discs and a ton of inventory in a really small space. It may be something you want to look at. It takes a little bit of learning. It sucked during the pandemic. It was like going to Texas de Brazil. You ask them for, do you want discs? And it was either yes or no, and they just send you a box of discs. You couldn't pick color, you couldn't pick weight, you couldn't pick style, you couldn't pick type. Luckily right now that has mostly cleared up. So it was either yes, you want more, or no, you don't want any more. And our stock was kind of eradicated for that. But now that things have gotten back in order a little bit and plastic's a little bit easier to find and manufacture, things have gotten better for us for disc golf. So right now we just stocked up a ton for the summer. I expect the sales to be really good for that. The nice thing about it too is it's a lifetime sport. You can be 5 or you can be 105. For most of the stuff that I sell, you're sedentary, you're sitting in a chair, you're not doing much. So this is something where you're actually out and you're walking around the course, or some people jog the course for their cardio, that sort of thing. So I feel good about selling something in the store that actually gets you out to get moving around a little bit. And number 1 for us is Lego. It's a really, really tough brand to carry. When we started carrying it, you have to open and you have to carry with Toy House, which is an outfit out of Texas. It's a sub-distributor for Lego. You can't just start buying from Lego Direct. It's really low margin. We're talking 5, 10, 15%. It's like an endurance trial in general. You get the stuff in, your allocations are awful. You can't carry some of the stuff that's exclusive. Like all of these advertisements you've seen on D&D Lego, that's not something that we can carry. That's exclusive to just the Lego store. So there's a bunch of kits out there that we'd really like to carry that we still can't, even though we're at Lego Direct. But we had to carry Lego through the sub-distributor for 3 years before we had bought enough Lego where we could transition to Lego Direct. And it was costly. I would say that probably the first 2 to 3 years, we didn't make any money. We probably lost money carrying Lego, but sort of the way that we looked at it in terms of a bucket it was more of a marketing expense. Having the Lego brand in our store meant that people that came in from the outside world that weren't familiar with us and weren't familiar necessarily with our games could come in, they're familiar with Lego. Lego sort of put them at ease. They understood what Lego was, and they do some shopping, and they start giving us the opportunity to show them the other stuff that we have. So, when somebody brought up a Lego kit, but they also brought up a board game and they bought some Pokemon cards, things started to work out. So there were some sales that we ended up getting because we had Lego in that wouldn't have been there necessarily. Now, fast forward to a little over a year now, we've been Lego Direct. The Lego Direct margin is a lot better. It's not phenomenal. It's still not 50 off, but it's, high 20s, 30s, depending on what the line is and depending on what we're carrying. So now we're actually allowed to make some mistakes because we can put some stuff on sale and it doesn't kill us on the back end, and we're making enough margin on the front end. So Lego has really turned a corner, and the volume of the sales in general are really good for that brand as we've been carrying it. So that's been a lot of fun. Aside from that, I've got a whole bunch of stuff sort of behind me that are different things that we carry. I carry, Play-Doh over here, and there's this Chainsaw Man thing that's up on this side over here. That guy. This is U2's. So Pop. Everybody's familiar with the Pop, the weird head, and that's the thing. U2's is a brand that does a little bit more stylized, right? So this is Chainsaw Man. They're not stuck in the same structure. You're going to get a caricature, so it's going to be, something that's a little bit more to it. They're a little more expensive than what Pop are, but they've got a little bit more fight to them, a little more punch to them. Like, there's a ton of different toys and things. So this is Mix and Mood Grogu. Obviously super, super cute, not expensive. He goes to sleep, that sort of thing. So what I would say is when it comes to carrying stuff that's like this, figure out what your store is like and start with things that are closely adjacent, right? Like, I don't know if I would want to go crazy on something, that was all about Pokemon if I was a miniature store. It still might work. Your stuff might work, but start with things that you're familiar with. I mean, down here I've got, this is Game of Thrones limited edition Squatch soap. So House of the Dragon season 2 is coming out. We got Game of Thrones soap that we're selling. That does really well. There's a nice display out there. We're big fans of hygiene here. So having that soap to carry is really good. The other one that I'll give you, that this one's free and it'll probably make you a ton of money. Beyblade's about to have a moment. So this is Beyblade X. Hasbro's getting in the really good Japanese Beyblades. They are better quality than the garbage ones that we've seen. They right now are really hard. So I'm importing these from Japan. They're super expensive. There's a whole bunch of nonsense you have to go through to do it. But allegedly, Hasbro is going to start selling these to us as well, and we're going to have stadiums and that sort of thing. If Beyblades are not on your radar and you're a larger store and you're looking for something that's going to do something this year, this is going to do something this year. So if you don't know about them, you haven't looked into them, if you pay attention to nothing on the video here at all, get yourself an end cap of Beyblades and see how it does. And at the end, if they don't sell for you, let me know and I'll buy them off of you. Beyblade, let it rip. Positive Produce. These little guys, potatoes, cucumbers, all kinds of little stuff. It's a crocheted vegetable that has a nice phrase. This one says, "I may be a tiny potato, but I believe in you. Go do your thing." So they sit in your little office. They're cute. We've sold like 1,000 of these things for, I don't know, $5 or whatever. What else do I have? So Shilling is really good. They got a bunch of these. These are, again, this is like the low price point stuff that I need to have on my shelf for when kids come in and they want different things like sensory stuff. It's really, really good for them. There's like a gummy bear. There's all kinds of things. These are super cheap, and when you look at them, you're like, this isn't that exciting. But after a week, and you're like, oh, that little tiny square there sold $250 worth of stuff. I mean, that's doing as well as some of your CCG boxes from older sets or whatever. So if you look at it as an entirety of all these different things that you have, it takes a little bit of work. You got to go outside the bounds of regular distribution to get these things in and stuff. But in general, as a category, all of them put together, they punch well above their weight class, and it gives you the ability to separate yourself from the other stores, right? If everything you're buying is coming from a distributor, and your store is going to start to look the same as everybody else's store. So even if you just pick one or two things and you grab them and you bring them in, it'll give you a little bit of separation from your peers. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today. Thanks for everybody for stopping by and taking a look. Next week, we're going to talk all about inventory management. We'll be back to our normal Wednesday stuff. It'll be 1:30. Hopefully our internet will be back on. So again, thanks everybody for stopping by, and stay classy.